All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I have to admit, it's frustrating. Justin Fields has been saying it. Mike Tomlin has been saying it. For the last 2 weeks, this team has been shooting themselves in the foot. It's unbelievable. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Steelers were 3-0. Now they've lost 2 games in a row, 24-27 against the Colts last week, and then 17-20 last night at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the next few games are really interesting. They've got an away game against the Raiders, then they come back home to face the Jets and Giants before heading into the bye week. Those first 3 wins of the season were huge, but the Steelers have only scored more than 21 points once, and that was last week against the Colts. This team needs to step it up on offense. The defense can only carry them so far. If you've been following the Steelers, you know what's going on. The offensive line is in bad shape. There's not a lot of help from the wide receivers, and Jaylen Warren is dealing with injuries. Plus, the whole O-line is banged up. But what really hurts is the Steelers keep making avoidable mistakes. They were flagged 8 times for 50 yards last night. Now, I know 50 yards might not sound like much, but if you watch the game, especially if you're a Steelers fan, you know exactly how frustrating those penalties were. 8 penalties 5 weeks into the season. It can't happen. So welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Steelers today, and while I hate making videos after a loss, here we are. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for daily NFL content, including at least 3 Steelers videos every week. And hey, even though the Steelers lost, let's try to get this video to 100 likes. That would mean the world to me. It was a weird game too, delayed because of rain, so here on the East Coast, we're watching football at 1 a.m. It felt like watching March Madness or one of those late-night Pac-12 games. That delay definitely affected the game, but the real problem was the lack of offensive production. Let's talk about the running game real quick. The Steelers couldn't get much going against the Cowboys' defense. Najee Harris had 14 carries for just 42 yards, averaging only 3 yards per carry. As a team, they ran for just 92 yards on 26 carries. That's 3.5 yards per carry. And I was expecting more from Harris, especially because the Cowboys had been giving up 4.6 yards per carry this season. But the Steelers couldn't take advantage, going just 3 of 12 on 3rd down. It was a rough night for the offense. On the other hand, the defense did what it could. Sure, they gave up 440 yards to Dak Prescott and allowed the Cowboys to convert 9 of their 15 third downs, but they made big plays when it mattered. Early in the game, Dallas got into the red zone on 4 straight drives, but only came away with 3 points. TJ Watt and Nick Herbig had a big sack and forced fumble, and Dante Jackson had a beautiful interception meant for CeeDee Lamb. There were other huge plays too, like a blocked field goal and Joey Porter Jr.'s interception that set up a Justin Fields touchdown. Despite giving up yards, the defense kept the game within reach. But at the end of the day, 17 points just isn't enough to win. You've got to score more if your defense is working that hard and keeping the opponent to 20 points. Let's look at Justin Fields. He wasn't as sharp as in the past 2 games. He completed 15 of 27 passes for a season-low 55.6%, with only 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was also sacked 3 times and took hits left and right. The offensive line is struggling, and while getting Isaac Sumalo back helps, it's going to take time for him to get back to full speed. The Steelers' offense was really inefficient. They converted just 3 of 12 on 3rd downs and only had 233 total yards. One thing that stood out was George Pickens playing fewer snaps than usual. Mike Tomlin explained they were trying to manage his reps to get more productivity from him. It's part of a long-term plan, but it definitely showed in the Cowboys' loss. Now let's talk about George Pickens. He wasn't less of a focal point in the Steelers' game plan, but it seems like they were managing his snaps. Pickens was on the field for only 34 out of 58 snaps against Dallas, which put him third among Steelers receivers. Coach Tomlin said it's no different than when they manage snaps for guys like Cam Hayward, even though Cam is much older than Pickens. Basically, it's just about managing snap counts. No big hidden reason. Pickens was still targeted 7 times, the most on the team, but he only hauled in 3 catches for 26 yards. There was also that moment when he got frustrated and grabbed a Cowboys player by the face mask, throwing him to the ground. To me, that's just the heat of the moment, typical competitive football. It doesn't mean there's a bigger issue with Pickens. We saw stuff like this with Stephon Diggs last year, and it's not a reason to panic or think the Steelers have a wide receiver problem. Of course, this kind of stuff is never ideal, but it's not like we should be talking about trading Pickens. Speaking of trades, there's talk that Davante Adams might be moved within the next 48 hours, which is something to watch. But back to Pickens. I get that if you're going to run the ball a lot and control the line of scrimmage, you might reduce his snaps. He hasn't been the most consistent blocker recently, and his intensity and effort last game didn't exactly jump off the screen. It's not what you want to see, but it's not a major red flag either. As for Najee Harris, he had just 14 carries for 42 yards. Dallas wasn't blowing out Pittsburgh, so it's not like they had to abandon the run. The score was 6-3 at halftime, and honestly, even though the Steelers were behind, they still felt like they were in control of the game. At no point did I really think they were going to lose, which is why this loss feels so strange. But hey, keep in mind, it's a long season. Football is a game of inches, and the Steelers have a pretty favorable schedule coming up. They've got the Raiders, who are dealing with the Davante Adams situation, the Jets, who have their own offensive struggles, and then the Giants before hitting the bye week. If the Steelers can go 2-1 in these next 3 games, they'll be sitting at 5-3 going into the bye, which is a solid spot. After that, the divisional matchups will really decide where they stand. Overall, it was just a weird game from start to finish, especially with that rain delay thrown in. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts on the Steelers game in the comments. What grade would you give the team, and what stood out to you? We'll be back in a few days with more Steelers content. Peace.